to the Blended Podcast. We got a doozy. I think we got today. I think this is going to draw a lot of feelings from you, Eric.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay.
So, the question we got coming in today is how you deal with the world, the outside sources that may be trying to target your family one way or another. There's obviously enough going on internally in a blended family. Right? Then you add race, maybe different religion between the blended family. Like, there's so many things that, you're dealing with internally. To then have people questioning, why are you with her? Or why are you with him? He has kids. He doesn't. He's this race or that race. He's this, he's that, blah, blah, blah.
Man.
So much coming from the outside sources when you already have enough internally happening.
Well, people always have opinions.
Right.
And the smart ones keep it to themselves.
Yes, the dumb ones are very free with their opinions.
Very free with their opinions, and they're very free with their opinions, not just with like the adult me, but like the young ones.
Children.
Yeah, they're free with their opinions with young, impressionable children that really don't know the answer.
Right. Why would they? They're trying to just grasp what's happening around them, let alone you entering your 2 cents.
Right, when they're just trying to really grasp feelings. Like, feelings are good enough, and they're really good at this feels great or this doesn't feel great.
Right.
Right. And then you complicate it, the nosy one, the busybody, or like some people call it in Pennsylvania, the newsy, right? With the complications of questions like, is that really your sister? I never forget you were right about this topic because it touches me, because I remember my kids coming home and we blended our family. Blended meaning the word. We didn't separate our family. We didn't say that. We didn't put titles, that would go against intermingling. So we never had steps. And I'm not going to say never as pertains to me, but as pertains to the young ones and the kids, we never mixed that up. This is your brother. This is your sister. Right. Not this is your, I don't even know how to say it, your step brother. Yeah. Like, we just never did that.
Right.
But I would be doggone if the world on
try
a
to tell them
school
differently.
level.
Yeah.
I remember, I wish my girls were here because they would tell you about the arguments that they've gotten into in school on whether it was a teacher trying to identify your brother and sister as a step brother and sister, or it was one of their friends that they just couldn't let go of the fact that they didn't look at each other as step.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've never gotten into that situation that I can remember. I'm the eldest of 4.
Right.
I'm the only biological child of my mother and father.
Right.
My mother got remarried, had my brother, my dad had several relationships, and I have 2 sisters from his side. Right. So I have a half brother and 2 half sisters. Right. But I'd be damned if anyone tells me they're half anything.
Right.
I've thankfully never encountered that. But yeah, they're not half anything.
Yeah, and I don't see how you as a child, they may, one of my kids' counterparts, based on how their lives are situated, they may not understand, and it may be black and white to them. Right, because they have steps into their lives.
I think that has to do with like age and upbringing too. Like with my situation, just like my stepdad, from 3 to 18, he was in my life. It's 15 years of him being dad. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
And the first stage is in 3 years old is what, toddler?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm understanding just the very
basics
of life, and he's being presented to me as this disciplinarian and this person who loves me.
Right.
That's how I viewed him the rest of my life, and continue to view him. Same thing with my brothers and sisters. It's not like my brother came along and they were like, well, this is, your half sibling and blah, blah, blah. This is your brother.
Right.
That's that.
So the difficult part comes when you do come in a little later, and how.
Right, because if you're coming in at 13 years old, it would have been a whole different relationship with my stepdad, and it would have been a whole different relationship if my mom had gotten with somebody at that point who had children themselves. Those would have been my step brothers or sisters, because my understanding of them would be so disconnected. Right. It would have been, I wouldn't have been attached in any way.
Right. Well, maybe, I mean, on a different level of attachment, but maybe the attachment, we meet friends late in life and fall in love with our friends.
That's true.
So it's like, a different. But I do agree when we say a different level of attachment, though,
Right.
because an attachment that you had was one that was really not. You didn't have a decision in that.
No, the
right?
attachment was
So
through
automatic.
through the step parent. So,
Yeah.
for example, if 2 years in, parents decide this isn't going to work for us anymore and we break up, I could either be really close to that step sibling,
Right.
and we could remain friends, or
Right.
we could say the only thing that was connecting us was our parents, and so
Deuces.
whatever, bye.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
never-
mean?
Yeah, I never liked you anyway.
Right.
But then the question that we like in the beginning is,
Yeah.
what dramas lie when you are in a blended family? I
How do you deal with the world?
yeah, how do you deal with the world? And the world, not they're nosy and they're judgmental, and even in their looks, even in their. I remember times being at the field, especially when the girls get a little older.
Yeah.
When the girls get a little older, and obviously that means I'm a little younger.
Right.
And let's say my daughter's 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm at the doctor's office with them.
Right.
Right, and just because we call it a blended family, that doesn't mean that we look blended.
Right.
Right, we could look. It can look. I'll give you an example.
You're a cup of coffee, and they're like more like mocha.
Yeah, yeah.
They have some white They have some white chocolate in them.
Yeah. They have some white chocolate in them, right? So we're at the basketball game.
Yeah.
My daughter's basketball game, and I'm not gonna say being nosy and judgmental is always means you have a bad heart. Let me just say.
Yeah, that's true. No, I agree with that. I think some people are generally curious and they don't know how to approach things, so they just leave with the obvious.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we were at the basketball game watching my daughter play basketball, and my son play basketball, and in comes a white family, and they have some black babies with them. And then another family came in, and I'm like, so me and my daughter's looking at each other like, what's that about?
Right, you're just curious. Like,
Just
are they
curious.
adopted? Like,
Yeah, we're like asking each other.
Yeah.
Is it inappropriate to ask like,
Right.
what's the scenario here? We went with the line that it's probably inappropriate to ask.
Right,
for that,
right.
But then and that's just us being curious. But then
But I think that's human nature. See,
Right.
again, opinions. You went with the smart opinion of it's inappropriate to ask. A dumb opinion would have been to be like, so what's with this black kid in your white family?
Yeah, what's going on? Right.
Right.
Or worse, why would you have the black kid in your family? Or,
Right.
or vice versa.
Yeah.
Or who's the young lady with you?
Right. Are
Right.
you guys related?
Yeah,
What's
right.
happening here?
Yeah, what's happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just being nosy, right? And then to have teachers who, when I used to pick them up, because I was deep into the school. I've always been. I watched my mom do it, my dad do it. So I mirror my parents.
Right.
Like I'm gonna be deep in, and my sisters and brothers do it that came before me. I'm gonna be deep into the school. Like you're gonna understand that I'm the adult in their life,
Right.
and what's going on with their grades, what's going on. Who are you?
You come to me.
Yeah, you
Right.
come to me. But in the beginning, not so easy. In the beginning, kind of pushback. Where's the mom? Where's the mom? Right? And I'm like,
Mom's
well,
working, I'm taking care of this.
Yeah, I'm like, well, let's just look at the paperwork that the mom signed.
That says
that
so and so
that-
is in charge.
So-and-so's in charge. And even still, okay, but we'd like to see the mom. Well, you don't have that choice. Fortunately, my mom also raised me with a say that I can speak up for myself.
Right.
But I can only imagine being in that scenario, and you feel like, wow.
You know what so drives me crazy about that is that I know your just for the sake of conversation, stepdaughters
Right.
are lighter skinned than you, right?
Right.
But what if you were just married to a white woman and they just were lighter skinned and you're their biological father? Like, who cares where mom is?
Yeah, you're assuming.
Right, you're
Yeah,
assuming that this
right.
isn't my child. It could very well be my child.
Right, I could have adopted.
Do I have to do I have to explain to you like dominant and recessive genes and Punnett squares and how they work?
Right,
Like
right.
it's just scientifically this could very easily be my child. What are you talking about?
Right, and then that's where the ugliness,
Right.
right, of people's judgmental minds
Right.
go into.
And you're in that situation. Your wife is lighter skinned and your biological children are lighter skinned. You are
Right.
darker than them.
Yeah, you can look at my kids and think,
Yeah.
okay, what you don't know when you look at my son or my daughter,
Yeah.
or my biological older daughter,
Yeah.
you don't know where they come from, what's
Right.
their nationality,
Yeah.
what
You just
don't-
think they're mixed race, and they are.
right,
Yeah.
you
Right,
just think they're mixed race, and you don't know what race
Right.
is mixed with. You don't know
Yeah,
who
yeah.
she is. She has to be Spanish, but you don't know that.
Yeah.
So the assuming aspect is what hurts. Is what
Right.
what can hurt that.
Right.
And especially like I said, I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So but a kid, think about how you can bring that kid back 3 or 4 or 5 steps in their
Yep.
progression.
In this
Because-
blended family, which is difficult enough internally.
Yeah, you can bring them back. You can have them thinking. I remember one time it was going on so bad that one of my children, I'm going to say who, was like, I'm black,
Yeah.
straight lace.
Right.
It didn't look like they were black.
Right. Yeah.
You don't know what goes on in a kid's mind and
Yeah.
why.
But you know what though? Even if she's lighter skinned with a certain, let's say, a hair texture,
Right.
to the world she's black anyway.
But when they're
Very well. Obviously, you're talking about a child who's pure Puerto Rican with African descent, let's say, or of African,
right,
you know, of African heritage.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
right, but identified completely and looks like Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
Right, and not the dark Puerto Rican.
Correct.
Either,
Yeah.
right, and I remember that being like this topic. But again, she has to deal with her friends, her counterparts.
Right.
But adults need to be careful because if you challenge that, what you're basically challenging is her at that age group,
Mm-hmm.
her affinity or her idea that the dominant person in my life right now happens to look like that. And
Right.
I'm identifying with that.
Right.
So while you're saying to her, no, you're not, 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 what you're really doing is you're really back-ending me
Right.
and everything that I've been doing to say, hey, let's go this way because trust me on these decisions I'm making.
Right.
So really you're saying to her, don't trust him on those decisions.
Right.
Because you're not part of that.
Right. You're not really that, so you're not really of him. So let's, diminish this bond and this connection that you guys have with one another.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I remember fighting against that and saying, no, but you don't get to determine how she views herself.
Right.
You don't get to determine how she sees herself. You don't get to determine how she speaks of herself. That's what mommies and daddies do.
Right. You don't outside world get to determine that. Is this a conversation we need to have internally? For sure. But obviously when she's older and much more capable of understanding what it is that she's actually saying to the rest of the world.
To the rest of the world.
But I can't imagine what age this was, but let's say 10,
Right.
she's not going to understand that.
No, and you know what? Let's say if it was 14,
Okay.
right? Let's just say.
Yeah.
Let's just say it's 14 years old. We're going to assume that the way she is saying, this is what I want to identify with.
Right.
See, in 2020, we can
Yeah.
say she can identify
right.
with anything she wants to identify
Right.
with, right?
Yeah,
Whether
yeah.
it's the opposite sex,
Yeah.
whether it's a race.
Right.
In 2020, we can say, no, it's not right to tell someone what they identify with.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about a personal level
Mm-hmm.
and something that she's growing up,
Right.
and she's saying, no, what I see is strength.
Mm-hmm.
And what I see is consistency.
And you're diminishing that with your views of what black means.
Yeah, you don't even know if that's really what she means.
Right.
You know,
I look
like,
at strength and discipline and
Yeah,
a father.
love, father.
Yeah.
she can say that's what I see, even in
Right.
that moment. And maybe she don't know how to speak that.
Correct. And maybe her version of saying that is I'm black. But maybe
Exactly.
she grows up and realizes, okay, my version is saying that I'm strong and that's my father and, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But at the time, you can't take that away from her if that's how she's identifying you in her life. That's really what it comes down to.
That is
This is how
exactly.
she is identifying your relationship to her at 14 years old.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
that, and to me, that is, but it falls back on that idea of sometimes, we adults
Mm-hmm.
have to stay in our lane,
Yeah.
keep our mouths closed,
Right.
and defer to the parents.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to just defer to the parents and say, hey, if you have a concern, why don't you go to the parent and say, this is what I heard.
Right.
And
even then, it might not be your business.
yeah, it might not be your business. Is it? Is she hurting anybody?
Right.
Is she doing anything that's going to be inappropriate?
Right.
Then don't worry about what she's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think in those, but there's so many pitfalls. That's just like one. But there's so many pitfalls in when raising a blended family where people put their eyebrows up
Right.
and
Well, this looks odd.
and they're in and they're in attack mode.
Right.
That's the worst part.
Yeah.
This looks odd. Let me go into attack mode. And I remember me and my daughter just sitting there watching, And we had to make sure that we didn't go in attack mode, that we
Right.
didn't have any preconceived notions. I had to ask myself, are you looking at that family in any way other than
A family.
A family.
Yeah.
Right. Are you looking at them? And if you are, check your intentions.
Right.
You know, check your heart.
Again, check your heart, very important. But
Right.
also, like we said earlier, it is human nature, right?
Yeah.
It's I mean, we all, like, people are so dumb that say, I don't see color. Of course you see color. What you mean to say is that you don't let the stereotypes of that race or ethnicity dominate your understanding of that culture. That's
Right.
what you mean to say.
That's what you mean to
right?
say, right.
But everyone sees black from white or brown
Yeah,
or,
yeah.
you know.
Or you're colorblind.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And so the reality is your instinct is, oh, something here doesn't match.
Right.
Right?
Well, and you get, and
But as long as you keep it to yourself and not go, hey, question, so
Right.
did you adopt that kid? Because he's Asian and you're white, so tell me more.
right,
Right? That's none of your business
Yes,
what
none
they
of your
did.
Right.
Right?
Right.
You keep it to yourself.
Right.
You make your assumptions, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what they're doing with their lives.
Right.
It has nothing to
check
do with you.
Right. And check your assumption.
Yeah.
Like you look and you see and you go, what's that about? And then there's 99 different questions in your head. So I get it.
Yeah.
There's 99, and you might even feel a little, why are you doing that? You have so many questions in
Right.
your head. And if I'm sorry, you have to keep it to yourself unless you have a friend that has that situation and,
Right.
and you can be
Seeking
candid with
advice
it.
or something.
Yeah, you can be
or
candid.
like if you're like, hey, you know, if you feel like you're watching a family where there is adopted children, for example, and you're looking to adopt, you might say, and I would always preface that conversation with saying, I'm in no way trying to offend you, so please stop me if you feel offended, but
Right.
I'm looking into adopting from China or
Right.
Africa or
Right.
whatever the case may be.
Right.
I see you have a child here of XYZ race or ethnicity. Can you
Right.
tell me more if
Right.
this child is adopted?
Right.
If this child is adopted?
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Or like anything else, you know, sometimes when you don't think it's biological, and I'm going to say I don't think this way, but some of us would think if the child's not your biological child, that you have liberties that other people don't. Like, so for example, when you're with me and my daughter, and you're a stranger, and you're coming up to me, just know my level rises.
I'm on defense mode because
I'm in
I'm
daddy
dad,
mode. I'm in
and
daddy mode,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And then if you're asking questions, then I'm really super in defense mode,
right.
because so we have to assume that same veracity is coming from that parent, no matter what color
Right.
that or what race or nationality that kid happens to be. So it's been so many things that I've seen. They give you, some people give you the look.
Yeah.
They give you this eye of, what are you doing?
Right.
Why are you doing it?
Yeah.
What made you do that?
Right.
Why would you, like in the beginning of this podcast, we were talking about when we were pre-gaming.
Yeah.
What made, you're a young guy. Why would you take
Right.
on?
That's another aspect. It might not even be racial, although in a lot of situations with multicultural families, that's going to be the basis of
Right.
your foundation
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
But it also might be, well, you're a young guy. Why would you do that to yourself? Why do you want to take on this woman with baggage? I know that was the
Baggage.
issue
Yeah.
with my stepdad's mom
Right.
and him dating my mom.
Right.
She never liked my mother.
Right.
But on top of that, she comes along with a 3-year-old.
Right.
She just wants you to take care of her and her kid. Blah 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 blah. blah.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And then your internal family. Like I said in the podcast a while back, but I was blessed to have a family that are givers.
Right.
And so when I say givers, it's like that's not a question. Like there was no what she has what. There's not a question, but you do have these families that when you go in, like you just said, you go into the game and they're like, why would you do that?
We've discussed that before, that
Right.
you do need that voice because you
Right.
do need to be prepared for what you're getting into.
Right.
But if you in fact have your foot down and saying there is no question here, that's when the family questions to stop.
That's right. That's when you.
If you're
that's
in
when-
like the I'm trying to figure this out phase, you're looking for advice, okay, cool. But once
Right.
I've made my decision that I'm committed to this family, you need to
chill out.
chill out.
Right. Yeah. And the question that you should be getting if you're in a righteous family is, I remember my sister saying to me, "You sure?"
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
This is really because she's taking it from you're taking on a lot. Are you sure?
and she's probably taking it from the Eric, you be wildin'. Like.
So I know how far this can go if we really take it on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and right now you like Danny Terrio right now, right? You over here,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
over
yeah.
there, you doing this, you doing that. So are you? I remember she said to me, "Are you going to be consistent?"
Yeah.
And if you're going to be consistent, hey, 100%.
Right.
You know what I mean? But don't enter into nothing if you know you're not going to be consistent. And that was the
You better
biggest,
prepare to sit down if you're going to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it
Sit
right
down.
there. Sit your butt down, right?
Yeah.
Or can you keep your butt planted and hang out there?
Right.
And that's your new. This is what you're doing.
And that's how I knew that you loved your wife, because you said yes.
Right. Yeah.
Because a right woman will always be the determining factor, or white man will always be the determining factor in that.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you were all over the place, doing your thing,
Right.
it'd be very easy if it was a wrong woman to be like, yeah, you're right. Nah, this is not going to be good.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know
Right.
why. Yeah.
But because it was your wife,
Right.
and you knew what was, you knew how you felt and what was about to go down, you're like, no questions asked, no problem.
Right. And then the blessing that I had was, and then from there, it's like, okay, all right, cool. Well, let's talk about
Right.
the things that are going to make you better,
Right.
things that are going to make your family better.
Are we going to build this?
Right, how you going to build this, and now you have allies.
Right.
And like we had a podcast before that talked about, the flip side of these people. If they're close to you, it was called excommunicate, right?
Right.
So if they were close to you and they had these behaviors, then I'm sorry, but
You gotta go.
Yeah. And then the people that are outside of you that give you the looks, that ask you the questions, you get to shut them down and you get to ignore.
Right. You never see him again.
Right. You never have to see
Not
them
that
again.
easy with family, though.
No, it's not that easy with family or teachers.
Right.
But that's what parent-teacher conferences are for.
Right.
Because you still want them to value this teacher. You still
Right.
want them because they're teaching them.
Yeah.
But if it's wrong, you have to say. I remember saying to my girl sometime, that was out of bounds.
Right.
That's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And she that opinion. That was an opinion.
Right. Not
that
fact.
he or she had.
Right. Yeah.
And so just so you know, and it's just. But again, you communicate and set the tone, the stage, so that they can communicate with you, and if that works, then you can hear these things, so that those little hairline fractures you say no, that's wrong, and then they're fixed quickly. And if you're giving them strategies, let me give you a strategy the next time they say to you that's not your sister.
Right.
Let me give you a strategy for your friends. Well, I'm going to give you a strategy, and then you can kind of just shut them down.
Right. It's a different conversation, different strategy,
big time.
friend than with adult.
Big time.
Right.
Big time. Yeah. But both hurt. That's
Of
what
course.
I realized.
Yeah.
Both is because they both can be adamant. You could just tell your friend where to go.
Right. But with an adult, it's like, I'm supposed to respect you. You're supposed to be, the authority here.
Right.
How am I supposed to tell you that you're wrong or you're hurting my feelings or whatever the case may be?
That's why that communication is so key. So that when you hear it, again, you as a parent is able. That's again, like I said, that's where the parent-teacher conference comes in, where you get to address, and not only do you get to address, but they realize at that moment when you're dealing with adults that we talk as a family.
Right. We're not playing games here. This
No.
isn't broken in some way. It's not what you think. We're all in this together. We're working this together. We're discussing this day in, day out. And this is a point where we are fighting together as a family for this.
Right. And we talk. So and it's one nice thing, smidge off topic, but one beautiful thing is always when they know that you talk to your babies and your babies talk to you.
Right.
Because then that's when the game changes. So
right, because they know what they can and cannot get away with.
Right. And
like anybody, any human nature aspect, oh, okay, learn that lesson, trial by error.
Yeah, I better leave that alone.
Yep.
I better leave that alone because she's gonna.
I got away with that with the class from that family last year. Clearly they weren't on board, but this family's on the same page.
Yeah, this family's on the same page. So always be on the same page, and you ward off against some of those outside influences that can negatively impact your blended family, and that's the blended, babe.